Welcome, Trinity Western HN students, to Meet the Pros. Today is the first episode of the series in which I interview professionals in the field of kinesiology to provide you guys with some insight and a bit of direction as you guys step into your future as kinesiology professionals. So today's episode is very special. Like I said, it's the first episode, and we have as a guest Miss Danielle Lemay, who is an ergonomist at Suncor. She is a corporate ergonomist there, and she has been so kind to be the first guest on the show and share a lot of valuable information. There were a lot of big takeaways from this meeting. I've added chapters below so that you can skip to specific points if you didn't want to sit through the entire 1 hour long interview, but the entire interview was packed with great information. I highly recommend watching the entire thing. But that being said, I'm going to let Miss Lemay take it away. She did a great job, and yeah, thank you so much again for your time and being a part of this. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know if there are any other professionals you would like me to interview in the future, and I'd be happy to try and get them on the show. And yeah, enjoy, guys. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Pros, a series in which I, Andrew Samuel, interview professionals in the field of kinesiology to provide you with the insight and direction necessary as you step into your future. Joining me today, I have Miss Danielle Lemay. She's an ergonomist at Suncor here in Canada, and I'm very excited, Miss Lemay, to have you speaking on the show because you are the first guest on Meet the Pros. And once again, I just want to say thank you for joining me. I think this is a great thing that you're doing, and I really appreciate the fact that you are so willing to share what your experience has been like thus far. And I'm sure it's going to help the next generation of people in this field. So now I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and yeah, we'll keep it going from there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Andrew, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure for me when I receive the invitations to share my stories because I think as a student it's really important to see what are the different opportunities we can have as a professional in kinesiology. So let's first introduce myself. As you've mentioned, my name is Danielle Lemay, and you can maybe hear my accent. So I'm originally from Quebec. So I was born and raised in Quebec, and then I did all my study there and worked there for almost 15 years before moving to Calgary almost 3 years ago now. So yeah, that's basically the quick way of talking about myself. Growing up, why I went to kinesiology, it's almost mainly I would say because I've always been really active and I love sports. So maybe like many of you. So that's why that field really interested me. And I did competition in handball. I was also snowboarding, which I'm still doing, of course. And I also taught it. When being in what we call the Cégep in Quebec, which is just before university and after high school. So yeah, after that period, I just discovered that passion towards making the kinesiology my job, my work. So, but I don't want to tell everything right away. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I find that a lot of people that get into kinesiology are very active people, and they love sports and the athletic side of things. So yeah, it's very cool to know that you played handball and also did snowboarding. So yeah, so maybe now if you just get into your job title, positional responsibilities, and just kind of tell us what a day of working as an ergonomist is like.
okay, sure. So currently I'm corporate ergonomist at Suncor Energy. I'm based in Calgary, but we are a Canadian company. So we do have sites across the country as well as in US and in Europe. So my role is really to support all the sites. I arrived at Suncor as the first ergonomist. So it means that everything needs to be put in place and developed in terms of musculoskeletal injuries or risk factors. So developing the program, it's really my main mandate. Of course, there's many other tasks, subtasks that tied into it or will support it. But yeah, to develop a standard in the companies, you first need to develop the tools that will support it. You cannot arrive and say, okay, we're going to do assessment trainings, specific communications, or manual material handling, or different things without developing, first of all, those tools. So that's still mainly where I am now, 3 years after. Of course, the pandemic has put a little hold on some development. So I'm not as far as I wish I would be, but yeah, so that's really my main work. I also have to develop connections with different departments to have a better understanding of the business. But it's also that in all the type of work you're doing in a big companies, in a corporation, you need to know the other stakeholders, because it's a lot about project management, and you will at one point you will need to talk to IT or facilities or communications or whatever. So you need to really develop those connections and also find out where you can bring value to the business. So in terms of ergonomics, for me, I also have the mandate. I cannot do everything on my own, of course. So we do have what we call internal clients. So my internal clients, the main one are the occupational hygienists. So whenever there's an ergonomics risks or requests brought up at sites, the occupational hygienists, that we used to call them industrial hygienists. So those are really the first responder, that I call them. So they are the first responder at sites in terms of ergonomics. So my role is to support them, to coach them, because it's not necessarily in their core strength to know all about the body functioning, physiology, and biomechanical things. So yeah, I need to help them to better answer those requests. And I am also involved in some medical cases with employees who might be in return to work process for personal or professional reasons. That's also something else. And because I'm also passionate about it, and that's really, I think it comes from my kinesiology background, I'm an active stakeholder because I have asked in the health and wellness development team. So we are in the process of also developing a health and wellness program in the workplace. So I'm actively involved in that too. So which I really enjoyed as well. So that's mainly, I would say, my mandate, my task. So the daily routine, it's all about I would say having teams meeting. So it's really working meetings. It's not really to listen about other people talking. It's really to develop things in collaboration with other colleagues, which I really enjoy. Project management require also a lot of quiet time on my own to think and develop things. I'm also sometimes performing myself assessment. I would say with my arrival at Suncor, I've done a lot of in-person office ergonomics assessment. It wasn't my real mandate, but there was definitely a huge need in this. And you'll see now computers are part of our life since we grew up. So, and I would say the active population actually didn't grow up with those computers. So there's a lot of bad habits that just continue, that people are still using, and then unfortunately can lead to discomfort and aches along the way. So I have been involved a lot in office ergonomics assessment, but my role is to support all employees, so office and field. And with the pandemic, I've done a lot of virtual assessment. as well to help people in the comfort of their home, and I should say in the discomfort of their home when working. So and yeah, I can do it myself or use the help of a consultant in ergonomics, because the request is too huge. There's too many people asking for it. So yeah, I have a chance to also have the help of a contractor with that, which is great. So yeah, that's many different things prior to the pandemics. There's a lot of site visits to better know my resources, to better know my internal client, that I will call them, so the occupational hygienist, and also have a much better understanding of all the operation activities. So, which was great. So now we are doing it more virtually, but when everything will return to normal, the normal role of an ergonomist is to have the boots on the field to see, which brings, I would say, there's nothing like seeing it yourself and analyzing it. So
That was really insightful and very detailed. So thank you very much. So you mentioned that you work with employees that I guess work in an office as well as those that work in a field setting. So I was just kind of wondering, when it comes to the field setting, does that look like you going to Fort Mac yourself and helping out the employees that are up over there, or do you have other people that are there on a regular basis and what does that look like for them? Like, do they advise people what kinds of cars to drive, how to adjust their seat, how to maybe bend over when picking stuff up? Is yeah, if you could maybe just tell us a bit of what field work is like for an ergonomist.
So I would say typically I would go on site, and I've had the chance for during the first year I arrived at Suncor to travel before the pandemic. So yeah, it's really to visit the sites. And prior to it, of course, you need to get prepared to already know where you're gonna go and pre-identify where the needs are. So when you go on site, then you really target the areas where you're going, talk to the employees, and then perform the assessment with observation, photos, dimensions, everything. And then I come back at home, or I mean in the office, and then I will really analyze everything, and then I will continue to work remotely with the team. Um, so that's basically how I can manage it, not being on site in the operations. So, but definitely it involves to go there most of the time. And when we cannot for now, I have also we discover new ways to work, I would say, with this old virtual world now. So it happens sometimes also that the occupational hygienist will take videos for me to analyze, and then we will do the teamwork with virtual meetings. But yeah, really going in the field, and then also making presentation to the employees to present the results. And according to the results, the recommendation might be to develop a training or to develop, let's say, a poster explaining the proper postures. It can be so many different things. Of course, you can transform the physical environment, but yeah, it can be, as you've mentioned, to talk to the employees, teach them the proper postures, and yeah, to give them real-time feedback. That's also part of it. But another big piece of a proper ergonomics program is to have trainings, ergonomics training according to the type of work employees are doing. So it requires many different training, in the sense of the content is quite the same, but it's how to approach and make sure that people recognize themselves in the content. So it's also part of my mandate to develop those training, which I'm starting this year to really do more for field. It's already done for office, but for field.
Okay, that is awesome to know. Thank you so much. So I guess we've kind of mentioned the pandemic and not being able to go places and stuff like that. So uh, just real quickly, could you just maybe let us know what some of the challenges have been with the pandemic for your job, and how you've overcome those problems?
Okay, yeah, sure. So obviously, not being able to go in person has initially postponed, I would say, some project because at that time we didn't know how long it would last. So for how long are we in this situation? And then when we kind of realized that, okay, it's gonna be there for a long time, so let's do it differently. So that's how we started to communicate with sites and then reinitiate those projects and do tons of virtual meetings and also do virtual assessments. So I've been involved. It's interesting to see that in the end, I've been involved more than before because now there was no limits. It's not about planning a trip over their site. It's just I can support them whenever now with it. So it's not as easy, I would say, to analyze when you're not seeing it yourself or talking to as many employees as you would have liked. But still, you can reach out to a few people virtually, and you can make observation with video recording. So yeah, I would say I've been finally involved in more than I would have done in person. And it makes me think about another thing in your previous question linked to that one is um, I'm the only resource. So of course I'm the first point for more complex requests, but I can also pull on resources in the different provinces. I cannot do everything. So if there's a special needs, I have developed a networking, I would say, with companies that I know they can help us if there's a situation where I cannot go. Um, and even not during the pandemic, sometimes the budget can still be an obstacle. So knowing that I have other help, that's great too.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So I guess we can move on now. So real quick, you mentioned that you grew up in Quebec. So can you tell us, did you go to school in Quebec? And what degrees and certifications do you have that were able to put you in the position you are today?
Okay, yeah, sure. So if I look at my academic path, after high school, the academic courses is a little bit different in Quebec. So after high school, we don't go to university right away. So we need to go to what we call the cégep. So it's really during the cégep period that I kind of looked at, okay, what do I want to do at university? I knew I wanted to go to university. So, okay, what do I want to do? And then that's how I discovered the kinesiology profession, or at least program. So that's why I went to the Cégep in Quebec City, but I grew up maybe 2 hours away from Quebec. So I went to the Cégep in Quebec, and I just love to explore. So I wanted to go as many places as possible during my studies, not knowing where I would work eventually. So it's just the right timing to discover when you're young and a student. So that's really great. So I went to Quebec for the Cégep, and then I have been to the University of Sherbrooke to do my kinesiology undergraduate degrees. So I spent 4 years there. It was a co-op program, really great, with the opportunities of having internship. I'm not really aware of your program, but internship or even student job that are not related to your field are really important to better know yourself. But anyways, those internships really helped me to narrow it towards ergonomics, because my first year at university, there was it's interesting to see the reflection I've had regarding my future, because I realized that there was too much sport around me. I love to do sports. I'm doing it, and I was also for the first year I have been involved in the rugby teams at the university. But I'm not saying that I'm a good rugby player. I was really bad, but I was on the team. So I was playing rugby and I was learning sports at school. So there was too much sport around me. I just discovered that it was overwhelming. So I said, wow, but I love what I'm learning in terms of biomechanics, physiologies. So what do I do with it? So that's how I came to the point where I don't need to necessarily work in sports, but I would love to use my knowledge in the work environment. More like, and I know in public health, there's also kinesiologists. And that's how I came to the point where, okay, I won't stop because I love it. I love to learn it. But I think that for me, it will be more appropriate to use my knowledge in the work environment, because whatever your body is time, it's the same body that is moving. So it's all transferable, which I really enjoyed. So I finally pursue my school, I would say, with kinesiology. But the first year I was not sure because it was just too much sport. So that being said, the internship that I did just confirmed my real interest in health and safety, and specifically in ergonomics. So that's why I've pursued my school, or my studies, I would say, um, at the master degree. So I did the master at the University of Quebec in Montreal, in kinanthropology, with the concentration in ergonomics. Because we touched a little bit of this in kinesiology, we touched about ergonomics, but not as much. So I didn't feel well equipped after my undergraduate degree. I didn't feel I was really told to be a good ergonomist, or to go on the world market, the work market, to say, hey, I can do this in your company. So the master really definitely helped me to strengthen my knowledge regarding ergonomics in the workplace. And there was also internship being part of those studies. So that's how I finally found my first job at Pratt& Whitney, Canada. So it's an aerospace company making airplane engines, based in Montreal. So I've been there for 10 years before moving to Calgary. But so I would say, to be a professional ergonomist, it requires a background related to the physical things. So it can be either kinesiology, physiotherapy, um, ergotherapy that we have in Quebec, which is occupational therapist, yes, here in the West. So, but you also need to have the specializations, I would say, the master degree, or at least the certificate at the second level at university, to really strengthen your knowledge. So, and there's also, I cannot forget to mention that we do have an association of Canadian ergonomists, which I'm part of. So I already have my ergonomics associate membership, which means that I passed through the process of recognizing my studies. And then the next level is to get what we call the CCPE certification. So it's the Canadian Certified Professional Ergonomist. So I'm now in this process. I wish I would have done it many years earlier, but my previous employer didn't allow me. So that's why now that I'm Suncor, I'm passing through this process much later than it should have been. But that being said, to be an ergonomist, professional ergonomist in Canada, you need to have that certifications to make sure that you're a real professional.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's also cool to hear like how your passions changed, and how, you were on the rugby team at first, and then you said, you know, um, you were surrounded by too much sport, which is almost I find a similar situation for me. I've been on the soccer team and stuff, and soccer has been my passion for many years. But over the past couple of years, you find yourself taking it more and more interest into the way things are done versus actually doing them yourself. So it's very neat to hear that. And um, I just had a question about you said kinentropology was what you did your master's degree in at Quebec. Yeah. So
Yeah.
is that very similar to kinesiology? Is that the same thing as doing a master's in kinesiology, or what are the differences there?
In fact, that's the same thing in the sense of kinanthropology. It's the broader science of kinetics. So there's the kinanthropology, and underneath there's kinesiology. So it's just more the scientific
Right.
name, the broader spectrum of it. But yeah, it's underneath. Kinesiology is right underneath. So I could have said kinesiology right away, but that's how they called it.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. And yeah, I brought up the thing about passions changing and things like that. So were you always passionate about you know uh, I guess health and wellness of people? Is this like kind of what you thought you would be doing as you were growing up as a child? And what did you initially want to do, and how did that change as you grew up, and what were like the events leading up to that change?
That's a really interesting question because for me, growing up, um, when people were asking me, "What do you want to do when you will be, when you will grow up or whatever?" So I was always saying, "I don't know yet, and I don't know because I don't know that profession yet. And how can we make a decision without knowing all options?" That was my thinking. So it's funny because I have kids now, and when you ask any kids, what do you want to do growing up, they will say something that they know. I want to be a teacher, I want to be a police officer, or whatever. So they say something about the profession they know. But I was, no, I know I want to go to university, and really young, I said that I want to go to university, and I don't know yet because it doesn't exist, or I just don't know it yet. So I finally kind of did what I taught, in the sense of I didn't know anything about kinesiology before Cégep, and it wasn't well known either. I wouldn't say that it didn't exist. It did, of course, but it was really not known at that time when I grew up. So yeah, that's an interesting um, way of seeing things when I was young. And this brings me to even think about the possibility of being a career counselor, just learning about more professions. So it would have been my plan B. But it wouldn't have, I guess, meet all my interests, my other connects interests. But that being said, when I discovered kinesiology, because I knew I loved sport, and I also knew that I didn't want to be a teacher, because I've taught, as I said, snowboarding, and it makes me realize that I love to teach, but I love to teach to people who ask for it. So when you work with kids, it's a real vocation. And when you work with kids, most of the time, and specifically with say with snowboard, the parents want more than the kids. So that's how I realized, okay, I don't want to work with young people that just don't want to be taught. They just want to have fun. So I just realized that I prefer the adult population to work with, which is a good thing to know. So that's why I said, okay, I don't want to teach. And then I finally go towards kinesiology. But I'd like to also bring up another element that I'm sure everyone will recognize themselves. It's easy to know what you don't like, but that's really hard to know what you like the most to make it your career. So we all have different passions. So in my case, I really love sport. And then that's how, when I started the kinesiology, I realized, okay, there's too much sport around me. It's overwhelming. But I also like communications, um, I like to do counseling work. So that's how I finally realized that I love communications, but it's everywhere in our work. Whatever the job you're gonna do, you don't need to study in communications. In fact, to do communication in your job. So I love to do presentations, being a speaker, or just teaching or coaching people with my technical skills or even with soft skills. So that's why if you have different interests, how to make them also being part of your job, you can realize that there's many different things that you can do. If you like administration, you can even be your own boss, or whatever, if you're an entrepreneur, or you like leadership or whatever. So you don't need to really study in that field. They can all be combined together as you evolve in your career, which is great.
Yeah, that's really inspiring because I guess people think that, if you study one thing, so say someone's studying kinesiology, they think that they're put in a box when really there's so many different avenues that you could take it down. So yeah, it's really cool to hear, the journey from, being a teacher like at snowboarding and then kind of narrowing down the population and then going on from there. So yeah, that's great. And you also mentioned that you have to do presentations in your job and you love presentations. Some people would see presentations as, maybe a weak point or just a major challenge just because, they don't do it often. And um, it's just not something everyone looks forward to, especially students. So, but that seems to be, a pretty positive aspect of your job and that you appreciate and you enjoy to do. So, if you could walk us through maybe some of the challenges of your job. I know you mentioned some challenges that you had during COVID, but just maybe any others that, make it difficult to do your job, or and then end that off with the positive aspects and, what you really enjoy about being an ergonomist.
So I would say one of the challenge being an ergonomist and having a kinesiology background, it's first to always explain what it is. Still, in 2021, we still need to explain what it is exactly. That's one thing, but that's not the biggest challenge. I would say the biggest challenge is to always have to justify or convince or even argue, and it's at all levels. So if I go on the field, if I talk with employees, it's kind of an invisible risk. So there's still individual who don't believe in those risks. It sounds like esoteric, what I like to say, because they don't see it. It's not like being cut by something. So yeah, so I need to explain, justify, and really explain, and again, adjust your language to explain the rationale behind it, how your body react without being too technical, but just to make them realize, yes, it's true, it exists. That's one thing. And then if there's also to convince or explain about how we should transform it. So why should we invest in those transformations? So with the leadership, you need to convince them to invest in X and Y modifications. And afterward, the situation is not one necessarily with the employees, because they like being in their old shoes, I would say. So they don't necessarily will like the transformation, even though if it's better for them. So you also need to explain to them, justify, and try to convince them that it's better. Let's try this and you'll see going forward. So management of change, it's a big thing. So, and it's really will all type of employees. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I
If
guess
I
it.
can do
Yeah,
one
go
thing
ahead.
about
Go
the
ahead.
presentations, I know being a student and doing presentation, it's so awkward and it's not necessarily interesting. But when you do it for your job and you know what you're talking about, you're not forced to talk about something. and you don't have an imposed topic. You decide what you talk about, and it's your day-to-day job. So that's just so much easier to talk about something that passionates you, that you work about every day, so you don't need to get tons of preparation like at school. So it's another world. So that's normal to be awkward and not like it at school, but don't necessarily think that it's going to be the same in your career.
That's great to hear. And yeah, you do see that with students. They when they start taking classes, maybe that are further along in their degree, like courses that say are more kinesiology specific, or say a business major taking courses that are more business specific, they start to really enjoy doing the presentations and really look forward to them, because it's something they're passionate about. So yeah, it's great to hear that it's easy for you to talk about or things in the field of ergonomics, because you are so passionate about it. So that's great. So what do you believe are some important skills to have as an ergonomist, especially in your position, like whether it's interpersonal skills or, like presentation skills like we previously discussed. So yeah, just any other skills that you think are useful in your field.
In ergonomics, you definitely need to have interpersonal skills. I mean, you need to have that ability to connect with people, to make them comfortable. So, being really empathic and have listening skills. I know it's tempting to answer when you are in a conversation with someone, but really listen. Take the time to listen and not answer right away. So, because it's all about having a better understanding of people's jobs and people challenges. So, if you're not actively listening, then they won't open up to you. So that's really definitely an important piece of it, having that empathy. What else? I would say it's definitely critical to have proper project management skills, because you need to do multitasking. That's one thing, but it's always about managing a project. Every single request becomes a project. So you assess the mandate, the request you receive, and then you go talk to people to have a better understanding, and then you assess with visual observation, the use of different tool, whatever. And then afterwards, taking pictures, dimension, whatever you need to analyze it, propose transformation, and then lead the transformational piece of it, and then reassess. So it becomes a project. So that's why it's really important. Being in my role as a corporate ergonomist, though, I think it's definitely really important to have quite a lot of experience in field ergonomics, having seen and explored different type of work environment, to be much more comfortable in the type of situation you might be facing. And I remember having been asked when I was working at Pratt and Whitney, there's different divisions and work productions areas. So they were asking me about our final product. So do you need to be aware of all the aerospace things and whatever? But no, my observation are all about humans working. So whatever the environment they are in, I need to be able to transfer my knowledge. Like I mentioned in sports, so it's one individual moving to be more efficient in the sports. I will make the same in the work environment, the same body working it. So that's why if you've explored different type of work environment, it just will it will make it more easier for you going forward with the variety of environment you can see, and think about solutions as well.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
There's yeah, sorry, were you going to say something?
no, yeah, so I just want to wrap up by saying your technical skills are really important, but in anything you're going to do in your career and in your personal life, It's all about your soft skills. So we can always learn, we can always improve what we know, but the most difficult thing to change is ourselves. So how we behave with people. So to have a positive attitude will always be the most important thing. In an interview, that's even I would say myself in previous role where I had team and people reporting to me, that's the first thing we looked at. It's the personality and the open-minded, I would say, personality of people, because this is really hard to change. So to make sure that your team is working well all together. So yeah, that's really really critical piece.
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks again so much for that. Um, so I guess we're getting close to the end here. I was curious because a lot of students want to, be more productive and feel better after long days of studying and, now being online all the time, for a lot of students, not only in Canada, but around the world, it gets tiring, looking at a computer screen and just being at a desk all day long. So as an ergonomist, can you give us a couple tips maybe on how to, um, take care of our bodies a little more and our mental and physical well-being all put together, be it like, finding a cushion for your chair or just anything else that you would suggest as an ergonomist?
That's interesting because the first answer or the first comment that come to my mind is one thing that I learned when doing my bachelor. There's one of our teacher told us in every type of sport you're gonna do, if you want to get the benefits of it, it's all about having enough rest. So exercising, that's important, that's key, that's critical. But having enough rest is even more important because that's how it developed, how your body will readjust. So that's the same when you work, when you study. If you don't get enough rest, enough disconnection, mental disconnection, so for your physical needs, but for your mental needs as well, it's all about having enough disconnection time with what you are doing. So it's not related to the physical environment, but that's really one important tips I can give you. It's disconnect, develop that ability, because it's not intuitive. It's not everybody who's able to do it, but that's really important. And then from a physical environment perspective, um, there's three important things to have when we talk about working with computers. I've always mentioned it's definitely really important to have a proper chair, a proper chair that can adjust so it supports you properly, your legs, if you're tall, if you're short, or if you're larger. You need to have a proper chair that has some adjustment to really lean backward. That's definitely one of the key tools. And then the other one is to have a proper mouse. It exists tons of mouse and tons of mice, sorry, on the market. And that's not true that they all fits everyone. So we hold it for so long that it's important to have a mouse that really fits your hands, that suits your hands properly. So I know it's been quite trendy to have a really small mouse that is apparently easier to bring on the go and put in a bag, the really small one. But in fact, it doesn't take more space to have a bigger one in your bag. So that's why it's important to have one that completely fill your hands. And I'm not saying that you need to have mine. Mine is perfect for me, not necessarily for you. So let's have it try and make sure that it completely fill your palm. Otherwise, when it's too small, you will grab it. You can see the space. I'm cheating, obviously, but so it creates static work, and there's a lot of people having discomfort. So that would be the second one, and having an external keyboard. Why to have an external keyboard? It's because when you work directly on a laptop, in my case, it's a tablet, so things tend to be smaller and smaller and smaller. So you will be really hunched over. So if you have independent tools, so keyboard, mouse, and chairs, you can raise your screen at the level you need with a box, books, whatever. But it will brings you in a neutral position. So for the rest, we can always adjust. We can work with anything. You don't need to make it complex. So yeah, that's what I would say regarding the physical environment, the basics.
Well, those are great tips. I honestly never would have thought that the mouse was a big issue because I always use like the trackpad on the computer. So yeah, I guess having a mouse and stuff that is good for you because once again, in many aspects of life, something that works for someone else is not always going to work for you. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are some great tips. And yeah, this has been really great, Danielle. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing, what your life has been like leading up to this point in terms of, academics and personal personal interest and things like that. So thank you so much. I think you provided a lot of insight for the viewers and Trinity students. I hope that you guys can get some value out of this and use the valuable information that Danielle has shared with us and use it and apply it in your own life. So thank you so much, Danielle. Any closing remarks from you?
Thanks for the opportunity. I'm really glad having had the chance to talk about my journey because, as I mentioned, it's been my passion to help people and to make them happy in their work and even personally. So yeah, it's just part of my own journey at work to help people to be a better version of themselves. So yeah, it's just great for me. So thank you for the opportunity.
No worries. Thank you so much, Danielle. And I look forward to chatting with you again. And yeah, all the best to you and everything that goes on in your future.
Thanks. Same for all of you. All the best. Follow
Great.
your heart.
Thanks, Danielle.